You're listening to the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman, episode 10. Hi and welcome to this week's podcast. It's a solo show, so you have me for the next however long I ramble on for. So thank you so much for joining. Whilst I've got you for a few minutes, well, hopefully a little while, I just want to say a massive thank you for everyone that leaves a review and that leaves a lovely comment. You've no idea how much it means to me, really, because the podcast for me was a bit of it's something I wanted to do for a long time. I listen to podcasts a lot. It made perfect sense to do it. But as you'll know, if you're in the equestrian or country area, or rural area, we didn't really have podcasts. And I was thinking, well, maybe there's a reason for this. Obviously, I work with Sam with the HeyNet podcast, which is amazing. But in terms of other podcasts, if you think about all the different industries, there's loads and loads of them. And in our space, not so much. And obviously, I think anytime you do something different that breaks the mold, that feels a bit scary, you do sort of think, is this a good idea? Am I out of my mind? I mean, I think those things quite a lot, but it really was and continues to be quite a thing for me. And I was saying to someone the other day, whenever I do a solo show particularly, I actually feel really anxious about it, which is really silly because I'll do a Facebook Live and not bat an eyelid. But there's something about just being here chatting to you. And I'm literally sat here now in my office. There's lights on. It's really dark. It's a pretty grim November day, to be honest. But I really love doing it. So massive thank you for listening. And if you could leave a review or tell a friend, I'd just be so, so grateful. So today's podcast, I'm going to talk you through 7 apps on my phone that I feel really help me run my business. So I'm not going to include things like Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook pages, because I'd have to have those on my phone. The ones I'm going to talk to you about are things that perhaps you don't have on your phone, or you might do, or you might want to have it after this podcast. So these are 7 apps that I use a lot. I mean, actually, before I started recording this, I went through my phone and looked at all the apps, and I've got, turns out, a lot of apps on my phone, but quite a lot of them I don't actually use that much, or I find them quite clunky to use, and I find the desktop version better. I mean, there's 2 on this list that I do also find the desktop version better, but actually the phone version, the mobile version, is also very usable. It has got better, especially for little jobs. So I thought this would be quite a good podcast because we all have our phones surgically attached to us. Well, I do. And I think having some really good apps to help you on your way is really important. I should have also said that in addition to Pinterest and all the other ones, the podcast app for me is also a vital one that's always been there. So these, I say, are 7 ones that perhaps you don't have, but I think might be really useful to you. So I'm going to start with Audible. Oh, how I love Audible. I listen to audiobooks or podcasts whenever I'm walking the dog, when I'm in the car. My car talks to the phone. I don't know how. I assume it's witchcraft. But it actually means that I can walk the dog with my earphones in. And then when I come back, if I'm going out somewhere, I just chuck the phone in the car, drive off, and it starts speaking to me, which I love. I do love reading as well. But especially at the moment, I've found that I am listening to audiobooks a lot more than I'm reading. So Audible for me, I pay the subscription, which I think is, I'm going to say it's $7.99 a month maybe. So it's not cheap, but actually if you look at the cost of the books, if you were going to buy them, if you buy them new, they're usually more than that. And also more to the point, if you bought the audiobook as a standalone audiobook, it would be more than that. I'm not saying you should subscribe to Audible. I think you can have your first book for free though if you haven't already. So I would have a look into it, and that kind of got me hooked. I listened to a book by Dorie Clark, I think, which I really, really liked. And that then led me on to other things. But they do have a really good selection on there. And I love learning, and I love learning on the move. So to me, earphones in when I'm walking the dog or driving the car, obviously not earphones in, so it can chat to me. So any long car journey, I'm starting to look forward to, because it means that instead of thinking, oh God, I'm going to be sat in the car for hours, I think, ooh, podcasts. Which ones haven't I listened to? Ooh, audiobooks. Which ones have I not got? Or I sometimes even, I know this is sad, but where did I go? I think when I went to badminton in May, I bought extra credits, I know, and saved a book just for the journey. I know, I feel like I've revealed too much now, but I love Audible. So if you're even vaguely interested or you're wanting to read more books, in inverted commas, but you just don't have the time, I'd really, really suggest Audible might be a really good option for you. At least give the free book a spin, because there's no obligation there, and you get to keep the free book. So even if you don't like it, generally you get to keep the free book. So Audible for me is a really good one. Now the next one is, I'm kind of on the fence about it, but the concept's really good, and that's QuickBooks. So I use QuickBooks to do my invoicing. I know there's other things out there like Xero, and I've heard of lots of other ones. I'm mentioning QuickBooks because that's the one that I use. I'm still not quite sure that this kind of invoicing style is for me, but it's actually perfectly fine. I just hate invoicing. But QuickBooks on my phone is really, really good. It takes me much less time to invoice. Obviously, I could use a desktop version, but I find the phone actually much quicker. And it means that I can do my invoicing really, really quickly, which is really good if you don't enjoy invoicing. And I think it's a really good idea. It's not the cheapest. Again, I pay a monthly subscription, but if I either put the time into doing the invoices manually or had to pay somebody to do the invoices for me, it would be much more than the QuickBooks subscription. So that is a possible if you're struggling. I'm not necessarily saying you should have QuickBooks, but there are other invoicing bits of software that you can get an app version for, which means that you can invoice on the move. I know there's Xero, but I have heard of others as well. So that might be something to look into if you're struggling with invoicing and it's driving you mad. Have a little look around. I would ask some people what they use, ask if there's the app version, and see if that's going to fit in with your lifestyle. Now the next one was a bit of a surprise to me as well, and it is Lightroom. So I know, I can feel any photographer listening to this going, what do you mean you use Lightroom? I don't use it well. So I downloaded Lightroom because I don't use filters on my Instagram grid because they never seem quite right. And I don't really want to be like pink or two-tone. I want to be like a more normal colour. As in a more realistic colour, let's be honest. So I was told by Sophie Callahan actually that Lightroom was really good. Now, Sophie's a professional photographer. Sophie knows what she's doing. I do not. And I'd messed around with all the different little toggles and the brightness and the contrast and all these blooming things, and I couldn't get it quite right. I would kind of get a picture that looked okay, and I'd make it look more lifelike, so you're kind of taking out the light issues. That's how I use it, probably not how you're meant to use it. So I messed about with it, and it was all right-ish, but I didn't feel I could achieve the same thing consistently. So when Sophie came to do my photo shoot in July, I took a picture of her and Marilyn, and I was messing around with it. I said, I'm going to post it on my grid. And anyway, Sophie said, oh, let me have a look at it. And basically, she just pressed some buttons, twiddled some things. There's more behind it than just twiddling, but you know what I mean. And it looked much better. It looked much more lifelike, as in like it was when I took the picture. So she basically set up a load of presets for me, which I then apply to all the images I take now. And I know she'll shoot me for saying this, but I mean, I'm not even sure if she meant to do it as presets, but I just copy and paste the settings and then I can adjust them a little bit. But generally, it's much better. And it helps me to maintain a more consistent overall look in my grid. Now, I don't really understand quite what magic and witchcraft Sophie has woven into my Lightroom. But you can buy presets from different people. I believe Jenna Kutcher does presets that you can buy that help you to achieve a similar feel on your grid. So I kind of think of it like people apply a filter to their images to make them all have that consistent feel, to make it all fit together and make it feel cohesive and for the general aesthetic. Now, as I said, I'm not really sold on filters just yet because I've never found one that I'd want to apply to everything. But with the Lightroom presets that Sophie's put in for me, it helps me to create a cohesive look, and it just lightens things a little bit. It does more than just that, but it doesn't make it look unnatural. And I think sometimes filters can do that. But to me, it's really, really useful. It's brilliant to use on the app. You just import the image from your camera roll. I copy and paste the settings, and then I export it, and it's done. But I know there's a lot more to it than that. So I'm saying I love it, but I'm also saying I basically had a professional photographer set it up for me, so I loved it. Before then, didn't love it, couldn't work it. So for me, Lightroom's a really good one, which I never thought I'd say. But there you go. You live and learn, eh? So my next one is WordSwag. Now, you might not know about WordSwag. It is a paid for app, but it's not a lot of money. It's a few quid. And if you look on my grid, I have different kind of quote styles. So if I'm pulling out a quote from a podcast, I'll do that one way. But often if I'm doing a motivational quote or an inspirational quote, I will do it on a pale green background, and the font, the typography is I love it. So it's usually a mixture of uppercase, lowercase, and it's always the same style. And I do this through an app called WordSwag. Now, WordSwag, I've probably had this app for a few years now, and I used to use different styles. It's really good because you can create really nice graphics through the app. You can use their images, which they have. You can use solid colors. You can use your own images. You can change the colors of them. You can add filters to them, and then you can overlay them with different styles of text. So they have different styles at the bottom. And not just, whether you use Arial or Bloomin' Lobster, it's much more, it's much cleverer than that. So if you want to have a look on my grid, you can see that I have got quite a few different styles of imagery and different typography that's all combined together. And this is what WordSwag does for me. So there's lots of different styles. Do have a look through it if you're interested in a really easy way to create really nice graphics for your Instagram, your social media, your blogs, anything like that. It's a really, really positive way of doing that. I said it was a few pounds, but it's really, really easy to use. You can also insert your own logo. When you go to the end screen, you actually save it without the logo, and then you can add your logo. And again, that can be really useful. Although, little top tip, what I do now is I actually have templates that I make in the next thing on this list, which is Canva, and I include my logo in them. So I've got the pale green background with my logo already as basically one image, and then I select that when I'm making my graphic. It just saves a bit of time and stops there being millions of things on my camera roll. So I've just got down to the thousands of things. Because if you're anything like me, your camera roll is just heaving with pictures, videos, everything else. So WordSwag can be really good for that. It is a paid for app, but to be honest, for a few quid, I really like it. I think it's a good few quid. Next one is Canva. Now, I've been quite vocal in the fact that I love Canva on the desktop, and I really, really love Canva on the desktop. But the app, the mobile version, has never been that great for me. And I'm not going back on that. I still think the desktop version is superior in every way. But if you want to make a minor tweak to a graphic that you've created on the desktop version, the mobile version is actually pretty good. The app version has, I think, improved, and I find it much easier to deal with. I still find the desktop much, much easier. And if you do a minor tweak, I can end up moving things all over the place, which you don't want. But it can be really useful. And Canva itself as an app is superb. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece of software. I absolutely love it. I use it all the time. I mean, probably 50% maybe of my posts that I put on my Instagram grid and that I put on my Facebook are probably created through Canva. So apart from the ones I've just talked about in WordSwag, the images I make that are quotes taken from the podcast, Tip Tuesdays done in Canva, my blog posts, sort of headers, they're often done in Canva. Well, they're always done in Canva. So maybe not 50%, but quite a high percentage are done in Canva. Also, I use those images in my blog, so they're generally the image you see in my blog or you see on Facebook. I also do things like my Facebook header image. I do all the podcast graphic you'll see today. That is also done in Canva. So Canva's really good. I'm a big old fan of Canva, the app and the online version. I've only ever used the free version of Canva. I've heard that the premium version is really good, but I've never needed to use it. I think the only thing that would probably be really useful to me would be the resize option. But I haven't found I've needed to use it that much, so I've just been tight and just kept with the free version. So obviously it's all up to you. The next, so number 6, will be Repost. So this is an app that works with Instagram. Now I do admin a few Instagram pages for people, Instagram accounts, and user-generated content is a really, really big thing. It can be really brilliant for so many reasons, which I feel is a whole different podcast. But reposting it properly can be a bit more challenging. There are different ways and people do different things. I mean, top tip, always ask permission. That's your first point of call. And then what you do afterwards is down to you largely. But the Repost app is free and it has that little white, I think you probably have a black box as well, on the bottom that has the 2 arrows and then it has the person's name who the image belongs to. So if you're looking to make sure that the image is credited, Repost is a really good app to do that. It's really simple to use as well. So, that's a big old win, isn't it? So Repost, again, there are other apps that do allow you to do this. I use this one. I haven't used any others because I've never really found the need to. I'm kind of a, if it works kind of girl. And this works for me. It's really simple, really like it. Last but definitely not least is Dropbox. Now I do have one of the paid for plans on Dropbox because I have a lot of stuff in my Dropbox. I mean, for example, when I've recorded this podcast, that's where it'll go for editing. And then my husband will edit it and then he'll put it in a different folder in Dropbox. So Dropbox is a big deal for me. I also have a lot of client images in my Dropbox. Oh God, videos, all sorts of stuff. So for me, Dropbox is quite a big deal. I find the desktop version is much better. So I will record the podcast and I'll put it in on the desktop version because I can just drag and drop it and it's really easy. But for example, if my husband's done a video edit for a client or if he's edited the podcast and the person I interviewed wants to listen to it, I can just quickly share the file from there and it'll email them a link and that's really useful. So again, I don't have to power up the computer. It takes about a second to turn the computer on, but you know what I mean. It's also good as well because I can quickly look through and even take screenshots of stuff in Dropbox if I want to show someone something, which because I'm out and about quite a bit is useful because I don't like to take the computer everywhere. I don't take it anywhere actually, I like it to stay at home. I find Dropbox, the app, can be really useful for that. It's just there and you can store so much in it. So again, when I went to the Farm Business Innovation Show, I was giving a seminar on 5 free ways to promote your oral business. And although I had everything on a little USB stick for the computer, I also had a version that I put into Dropbox just in case something went wrong. Because I knew that from that, I could either email it to the main computer that I was using, or I could even just use it as basically a kind of a prompt card to talk through my seminar. If everything else failed, I knew I'd be able to use it. So I put things like that in there as well, because at least I know I can access it rather than phoning home and trying to explain to my husband, father, 3-year-old toddler, how to work my computer. I wouldn't let the child on the computer for the record, but you know what I mean. It can be really useful just to have all that information at hand. So there are my 7 apps that I use on my phone a lot that you might not know. They're not the ones that come as standard. So that's Audible, QuickBooks, Lightroom, WordSwag, Canva, Repost, and Dropbox. Now, obviously, I haven't been paid to talk about any of these things at all. I just use them, and I think they might be useful for you. They might not. You might have other options. And if you have, let me know. I would love to know what apps are on your phone because I'm always looking for hacks to make life just that little bit easier. So if you have some amazing apps there that you think, yeah, she might like to hear about this, do drop me an email. I'm just Rhea, RHEA, @rheafreemanpr.co.uk. Let me know what you use. And also let me know if you have downloaded any of these and you like them or you loathe them. It's always good to get feedback. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast, and we will catch up again very, very soon.